This panel is on one of the most fast-changing topics you'll see, the future of cars. In front of our eyes, stuff is changing, which is why we asked Michael to assemble this panel. So I'll give it over to you, Michael, and immediately after this we have the closing reception by the pool. So, Michael, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Terry. Good afternoon, everybody. We're here to talk about some exciting stuff. Future of cars, that means for us today, electric vehicles and self-driving cars. Yeah? So, and I'm very pleased to introduce our panel, which brings to us some real-time expertise in these two areas. Starting on my far left is John Humphrey, who's global vice president in charge of operations globally for automotive business at J.D. Power. He also claims that one of his favorite meals in China, he goes there often, is fried scorpion. Yeah, to his right is Mr. Patrick Duan. Patrick comes to us from BYD, which happens to be the #1 EV maker in China, #1 in sales. And Patrick is currently based in LA and is in charge of future cars, but previous to being in LA, he once worked in Chicago. And when he first arrived in Chicago, I asked him, was there any culture shock? He said, yes, deep dish pizza. Okay. And then to my immediate left is Mr. Liu Wei, who I met recently. He's in charge of business development and partnerships at a company called Faraday Future, or FF, right? For short, FF, keep it simple. Liu Wei also has spent quite a bit of time in the United States. He told me one of his first experiences was with a police officer on a highway in America. I said, what was your first He goes, yep, he was going a little bit fast and changing lanes without signaling. So before he knew it, he saw the blue flashers behind him, and he pulled the car over, and he rolled his window down, and the officer said, do you know why I'm pulling you over? He said, I have no idea. Well, because you're going too fast, and more importantly, you're switching lanes without putting your turn signal on. What's your story? Don't you know you're supposed to put the turn signal on? He goes, no. In China, if you put the turn signal on, you'll never be able to switch lanes because the car next to you is going to speed up and cut you off. So the officer had a good laugh about that and goes, okay, you're off this time. But watch it next time. All right, before we dive into specifics of these companies and trends in China and globally, I just want to put a little bit of context to this, and that is, from personal experience, I went to China the first time in 1986, and I was living in a city called Chongqing in the southwest, teaching at a university as a graduate student, and I remember like yesterday, the president announcing that spring that the following week there would be only a half day of school. Everybody in the university, and in those days it was a downway. You had all the teachers, students, medical facilities, gymnasiums, supermarkets, everything was contained within the university. He said, next Tuesday afternoon's a day off. Why? Because we're getting delivery of our first car ever. And it was a big deal. They had two guys take a train to Shanghai, buy a Santana for $35,000, big money at the time, drive it across country and deliver it to the university. Big parade, music, everyone there to welcome the first car. Amazing to think that in those days, in 1986, China built about 5,000 cars a year. That takes a few hours in America. Today, this year, China will build 25 million cars, which is almost 1.5 times the US size. And we're not done yet, still growing. So it's within this context of huge growth and 25 million cars a year that a certain success in sales has created a new problem, that is pollution. Air pollution in China is among the worst in the world, and a few years ago the Chinese government got out and said, we need to clean up the air and we need to lead in technology. We're going to get there by being world leaders in electric vehicle technology and sales. And so it is today that China leads the world with about 600,000 sales projected for this year, and the leader in that industry is a company called BYD. Patrick, could you tell us a little bit about some of the basics of the car, the price of the car, who buys the car, what's charging like in China, and why are sales doing so well?
Okay, thanks, Michael. So BYD has multiple models we sell in the Chinese market. So right now BYD has been focusing on electric vehicles, including plug-in hybrid and pure electric vehicle. Last year, BYD, like Michael mentioned, BYD became the world's largest EV manufacturer who delivered the most electric vehicles to the consumers. And another number I would like to mention is this year, for the first half of 2013, in China, over 122,000 electric vehicles were delivered and sold to the Chinese market. And BYD is the number one of that. And BYD sold about 45,000 in the first half of 2016. So you can see the market is definitely growing. And to answer Michael's question, BYD's car is ranging from, say, 25,000 US dollars to 35, 40,000 US dollars before incentives. So it's a big range, a lot of choices for the consumers to choose from.
But John, it sounds like China is on a roll with electric vehicles. How is the consumer seeing this? Are they buying into electric vehicles, or are they looking at different options?
Well, that's a good question, because it's received a lot of attention over the past 10 years. A lot of the OEMs have spent an amazing amount of money into new powertrains. Yet when you look, and despite BYD and the super job they're doing, when you look at actual adoption, globally only 3% of all cars sold globally are electric vehicles. And we see that going in, through 2020, that'll go up to about 10%, but still very low in terms of the overall volumes that is. One of the key issues, it has to do with the price of the vehicle, as was just alluded to. Until the technology for the lithium-ion batteries becomes such where you can be on equal footing or near parity in terms of costs, then consumers, while they may say that they care about the environment, they want to do what they can, in their pocketbook, they're not ready to justify a price premium of 20, 30, or even 40% higher than a comparable ICE vehicle.
Okay, so electrics have nice momentum, but they still have far to go before they
Yeah,
surpass.
they're going to need government help in terms of subsidies until the technology is at the point that can make it competitive with petrol-based vehicles.
Okay. Now I understand FF has Tesla in its sights. It has an ambition to build a Tesla fighter, and that ambition was born from the founder of Le Echo company visiting the United States, test driving a Tesla, and then going back to China and saying, guys, we can do this and do it even better. So can you tell us a little bit about FF's vision? And also, I understand it includes autonomous drive, not just an electric vehicle, but autonomous drive as well.
Thanks, Mike. Actually, in speaking with what is innovation in the automobile industry, and I want to say we're not competing with Tesla. Actually, Tesla did a fantastic job. Basically people buying to the concept of EV, right? So we actually try to bring into something add up to whatever Tesla can provide. So our thinking is more like what does the people like to experience? Since in average, you're going to spend like 3.5 hours in the vehicle, and if we're talking about EV, and then you're going to spend another half an hour, charging at the charging station. So 4 hours a day in average. And what is the people they can do while doing all of those vehicle-related activities? So from our thinking is how we can bring the user experience or keep the user's lifestyle continue while you're driving, while you're charging. So that brought up the concept of connected vehicle. So what does that mean is you're going to be connected while you're driving, while you're charging. And I try to paint a picture when we're talking about this concept, and also there's lots of other customers, they're asking, well, what does that mean, connected vehicle? So I like to use a scenario is more like, let's say when you get up in the morning, so people here like to get a cup of coffee, very warm, right? At the same time, your vehicle is automatically pulled out from your garage door and put it over in front of your entry. You do your daily work like brush the teeth and wash yourself and take a shower. And once you're ready, the car is in front of the car, your doorway. And then you get into the car, and the car automatically sends out, what is your body looks like. Maybe the car suggests, hey, it seems like you got lots of work at night, so let me take over your drive because I don't think you drive safely. So the car, if you say yes, and then the car automatically take over the driving activities and drive for you, and then you can just sit in the car and relaxing. And then all of a sudden, your screen pop up, the emails, meeting arrangement, and also suggest you which route you're going to go to. Because automatically, the car will know, the congestion or the traffic situation, and then he's going to say, yesterday you went to this route, and today is congested. It's going to take you 10 more minutes to drive you to the office. Do you want to take another route? It's going to be 5 minutes less. You say yes, and the car automatically, take you to another route. And at the same time, you can start, reading the newspapers on the screen, U.S. Daily, U.S. Today, or whatever, and answering
in Chinese, in English.
Yeah.
Music, pipe some music in.
and then basically you can start arranging your meetings. Okay, so there's a voice recognition. The vehicle is able to understand you. So what does that mean? It's more like the vehicle no longer a vehicle. So we see the vehicle is more like the people's partner. Okay, so it's more like understand you, smart, and can talk to you, be part of your life, rather than it is a metal vehicle.
How soon can we get one of these?
That's a tough question. So basically that's the idea. Since Mike was asking me the vision, that's the vision. So what we do here is try to move the car industry towards that direction. That's basically what we're seeing that. And we're from the internet company, so we understand people actually live around the contents. The contents is important rather than driving. So we have, the contents. We own lots of movies. We own, the sports channels and lots of content. So while you're at home, do something, your lifestyle actually attached to those. And then when you're in the car, let's continue. Okay, so that's basically the idea on the connected vehicle.
You will have a car on the market, not with all the bells and whistles, but how soon will you guys, FF, have a car?
Yeah, so the first mass production vehicle, remember, that's produced in U.S. is not imported. It's going to be launched at the end of next year. That's the public know information. So.
And it's built in Las Vegas?
Yeah, it's built in Las Vegas, yes.
Plants under construction now?
Yes.
And you're explaining how the Chinese will have tour groups going to Las Vegas and then making a side trip to the factory, possibly.
Yes, it's not only Chinese. There is an average like 14 million visitors to Las Vegas. And then what we're thinking is that we're going to build a different concept of the factory. So it's all glass, and then we're gonna get those people tour into our factory, and maybe while you're gambling in Las Vegas, you can check the status on your car. You can visually see your car where it's at. So basically that's the concept.
This is amazing. Chinese manufacturers from the internet business are coming to the United States and manufacture cars in California and in Nevada. And Patrick, you were working at one of those plants earlier in Lancaster, is that right?
Right. That was the drive. That was I live in the LA area, but I drove every day 1 hour.
How many people work at that plant in Lancaster?
We have about now we have about 350 employees.
350.
Yeah, we're manufacturing electric buses.
Electric buses, selling to cities around the United States.
Correct.
Okay. And you guys have how many people? Over 1,000, right?
Yeah, it's like 2 years. It's pretty much exactly 2 years ago. We have employee of 1. So today we have over 1,000, all in California. So,
John, what do you think about the U.S. consumer sentiment toward, say, acceptance of Chinese brands? We've got world-class manufacturing here in California with a Chinese brand name. What does that look like?
I think the fact that you'll be manufacturing here will be an advantage, right? If it was just a straight import coming in from China, I think there would be some questions and concerns. So I play that to your advantage. I think if a product that just was made in China and just come over into these markets would probably be met with a little bit of skepticism. And I think that's why you look at China's export policy right now. Some of the bigger destinations for export are countries like Iran and other areas in Latin America and whatnot, where the bar and the attention in terms of product competitiveness is not that what you'd see in Western Europe and the U.S. So I think it's a good strategy that Faraday is having in doing that, and it's something that maybe the others start to think about to start to get consumers used to having Chinese products on the road.
Actually, what we think Faraday Future is actually an American brand, so it's created here, and we have 100% employee actually from local. So it's not really Chinese auto manufacturer coming to U.S. So a little bit different route from BYD. Yeah. So BYD already got established name in China, well known, and then they come to U.S. For us, we just started up, from LA. So that's
to give a little background that might be helpful is Faraday Future is connected through investment to a company in China called Le Eco. Have you heard of Le Eco? Le Eco is a private company formed by a guy named Jia Yueting that is been called the Netflix of China. Well, they do Netflix type business, but they do a lot more. Just a month ago, they bought Vizio in cash for $2 billion. They also have their own smartphones and TVs, their own TV brand. So Le Eco, Le in Chinese means happy, and Eco is short for ecosystem. So they're creating this content. Like, you get into your car not to drive it anymore, but to just entertain yourself.
Yeah.
Relax and do your email.
Yeah, yeah, that's correct. I was in the Asian business model session, and then after the session, I was talking to Chris. I said, definitely agree with you, whatever you mentioned on the Alibaba, and Le Eco has pretty much similar business model. What we call that is like a open shared model, but once you go into the ecosystem, you can do whatever you like because we cover everything. So that's basically what it is, the ecosystem.
Will BYD, will you manufacture most of, you're working on future cars now, Patrick. Will you manufacture in China for the world, or do you see increasing manufacture here in the States?
The short answer is yes. We're planning on setting up manufacturing facility eventually for the car side, and that's like what John mentioned. That's a good learning curve for the manufacturing activities to happen in the local market. Globalization is localization. It's the process of localization, and that's not only making political benefit, but also making economic benefits. That's very true.
Some people are thinking about skipping cars, especially younger folks. We don't want to own a car that sits 90% of the time in the driveway. John, what's your view on where the consumers are with regards to doing things differently? Didi, for example, or Uber.
Yeah,
is that taking off in Asia?
No, it's a great question because I think there's very different attitudes and behaviors between geographies. So there were some studies that came out related to the States, and people were saying, well, even with the ubiquity of some of these car companies, and they're all out here, just out in Santa Monica, they don't see it being a detraction or something that would jeopardize the OE business model. Now, on the other side, you look at China, and there's too many forces, and I say China specifically, but Asia in general, there's too many forces at play that would suggest a change to the model needs to occur. The automotive business has been in stasis for over 100 years. I think this is an issue that's going to have to change, just given demographics and given migration patterns of consumers. So just in the last period of years from 2010 to 2050, you have some 64% of the people that will have moved from rural to urban centers within Asia. That equates to 3.3 billion people living in urban centers in Asia. Put that in context of the US, that figure's 390. A little bit higher in Latin America, about 500 million. No one is in the billion range other than China. So given we already know that in many of the cities in China, they're rationing license plates. They're controlling the volume in the big cities. And when you look at where China's at in terms of penetration, they have 200 vehicles per 1,000 adults. That's a good metric that we used to look at. The OECD average is about 400 to 500. The US is at 8. So China clearly has a long way to go in terms of volume. The problem is the infrastructure isn't there, it's not sufficient. So something has to change, and it might have to change from just using it as a convenience to using it in your everyday life. Because this is something that's going to be in the next 10, 20, 30 years, we're going to have to contend with this. The streets there are already too crowded, the environment, everything else are things that we need to deal with.
You mentioned the environment. Many of you might be familiar with the story of a guy named Brother Nut, Jianguo Xiongdi. He's a 20-something-year-old artist from Guangdong who about a year ago moved to Beijing. He bought an industrial vacuum and he started walking the streets of Beijing and sucking in the dust particles and the other pollutants, going home and crafting dust bricks and then taking pictures of his dust bricks and putting them online. Well, this went viral and the government got suddenly very concerned about public dissatisfaction with the way the air is looking. So this is yet another impetus for electric vehicles. And the irony, though, is, do we all know where electric power for electric vehicles comes from today? Coal. So you're sort of transferring emissions up the line a little bit. But as long as the city air is getting cleaner, maybe the coal plants are situated far away and it's more acceptable. Yeah. I meant to ask at the outset, just show of hands, how many here have driven or drive an EV? One, oh, quite a number. Okay. And so no range anxiety. You guys, everybody's happy with the EV. How about autonomous vehicle? Anybody driven or ridden in an autonomous vehicle? One. Okay, one brave soul out there. What do you guys think about acceptance among consumers, whether they be American or Chinese, to autonomous vehicles? Do you think people are ready for that? Yowei?
Yeah, I think recently we've seen lots of news about the accidents the Tesla Model Is encountered, and I think regardless of the accidents has happened, that's unfortunate, right? But the autonomous drive is going to be the direction, that's for sure. And the technology for the ADAS, we call that ADAS, is going to grow to more mature. So I think there's no doubt on that direction.
Coming.
Yes, coming.
Yeah, I would just add that we're early on in this technology. There's going to be bugs, there's going to be issues, but going forward, just with the increase in the population and the migration towards urban centers and throwing that against the insufficient infrastructure, it's going to have to come. Whether it comes in 10 years or 20 years, it's going to have to come. And if they can make the grid smart enough so they can control and optimize traffic patterns, that's what the end game is, right? That's how you get more productivity out of society. But that'll take some time.
I was just wondering, maybe for Mr. Duan at BYD, and then also just trying to understand why, given how big the market is in China, both for commercial vehicles and also sort of civilian vehicles, why is there such an emphasis of coming to the United States and spending time here when the market there would be so big? What is the advantages, or what's the long-term sort of plan for that?
Sure. John, you have the numbers, right? You do have the number. If you can give the exact number that you have, how big is the market, China versus the U.S., that'd be great. But in general, why BYD, a company like BYD, there is a huge market in China, why we are in the U.S.? That's a very good question. So BYD has been here for a long time. The first office we set up here was in 1999 for the consumer electronics cell phone business. And BYD, as BYD entered the auto industry, we wanted to bring over the same technology and try to enter into the American market. Number one, this market is the most challenging and the most picky market, and everyone knows about it. So that's a brand image and a quality image if you are able to successfully enter this market. Number two, I'm not talking about the heavy industry like electric buses we're working on. That's a small market. But for the car market, it's not small. So it's a huge market. So for both reasons, that's why a company like BYD, we want to take the challenge and try to come here.
Yeah, I just add that, you know, if 5-6 years ago, that question was asked, we would say, why bother? You have enough demand that needs to be stated here. The trouble is we've got the issue that's not talked about enough of rife overcapacity. So right now, China is going to sell 25, 26 million units this year. They have the capability of building 39 million units. So rough math, that puts you about 64, 65% utilization, far below the 80% threshold. Now, that figure kind of covers up some of the figures by OEM, because some of the multinationals are running north of 95. Some of the domestics are running down in the 30s. The problem is, and this is a big problem that needs to be discussed, is there are more brands in China than any other market. Yet in any market-based system, these companies would be allowed to go under or be subsumed. Not the case. We thought this was going to happen 5 years ago, and we thought it was going to happen 5 years before that. It's not happening, whether it be tax revenues at play, whether it be employment, whether it be anything else for your local province or state-owned enterprise. They're not being able to go under. And that's a shame for everybody else, because it's starting to be a drag on the industry overall. It's creating deflationary conditions within the OEs, very much hurting the dealers, and it's something to be stopped. So one option for them is to take that excess capacity and start to ship it to new markets. Now, it takes a while to get all the licensing and requirements and then the distribution set up to go into these markets, but that's one avenue for them. So certainly it's an issue that they need to deal with. We were hoping they were going to do it through consolidation and let just free market forces address that, because it's hurting everybody, Chinese and multinationals. But we're going to see over the next 5 years a more aggressive push of Chinese vehicles going outside, because the quality of the vehicles have improved considerably and they're reaching near parity with the MMCs.
From our side, I just add to that. So for us, we're like a latecomer, right? So we just start up. And it's very logical for us to start it from here, because, if you look at, globally, the technology base and also innovation capability here is the most active one. So that's why we started from here, because for us, we want to bring in new technologies and merge those into the vehicle, basically. We try to make the vehicle smarter, right? Internet, autonomous drive, and other elements, it's all from here. So very logical.
Maybe I can ask a question. So the car that Faraday Future wants to bring out will be autonomous, but it would also be individually owned, because you're saying it will come up. But will these autonomous cars be owned individually in the future, or will they be fleet owned? What will be the concept of ownership?
Yeah, basically, people kind of are confused by the autonomous driving. So actually, from technical term, there's several stages of development. So there's like a level 1, level 2, all the way to level 5. So the question is, what kind of level of the autonomous drive we're going to bring in, or what is the current status on the autonomous drive? So the incidence of the Tesla, actually, they're at the level 2, right? So level 2, if we mark it in the way saying this is autonomous drive or autopilot, it's actually not. So people immediately think that's autopilot, meaning, I can have the car drive by itself. But it actually stays on level 2, meaning that's the assistant driving. So you cannot move your attention away from driving. So from our side, definitely we want to make that concept very clear to the market. So the car, when we try to get into the market, we're going to say, okay, maybe it's level 4, but under what condition level 4? So we don't want to confuse the driver user and also the market. So that's what we will do. And answer your question, definitely, autonomous drive is going to be available on our vehicle.
Hi, the Chevy Bolt was getting introduced this week, and the Los Angeles Times did a cover story a few days ago saying it was a game changer. It was a 220-mile range, $30,000, a year out ahead of the Tesla cheaper version. Would that car have an impact in China, and how do the Chinese brands compare to the Bolt?
Yeah, I can talk about that. The Bolt is the EPA rating for that car. The range is 238 miles, and which is definitely a game changer to my opinion. Because for all the EV manufacturers in this market, what we've been looking for is the mass market. Like what John said, is 3%, 5%, and even 5-10 years from now, it's 10%. That's still a early stage adoption by the consumers. So if you look at the issues, why the market is not ready, definitely the public infrastructure is one major factor, but the price of the vehicle and the driving range are both major impacts or factors too. And if you look at the Chevy Bolt, it solves the two I was talking about, the price and the driving range. So that car, why it's a game changer in the whole market, is resolving two of these issues to the market, and that is good for the entire market, including all of us here for the new energy vehicles. That's a good thing to the whole market, because that provides more options and more readiness, and it proves more technology readiness to the market. So to answer your question, it will play a big role. No matter it's the U.S. market or Chinese market, it's a good product.
I think this should even bring it up a little bit, because in China, we all know if the range over 250, you get more incentives. So it's right on the border. I think they can just change a little bit in order to reach that hump, and then they will have bigger, much bigger. It's like a $55,000 bigger incentives, and the incentives for the long range keep going up. So if they do a little bit, technically, it's simple, right? So jump it up, and then they get
talk to Volkswagen about emissions. No.
That's my contribution to your question, basically.
Quick impact on China. You guys may know electric cars basically have to be manufactured in the country. The tariffs. So if the Bolt's shipped to China after tariffs and VAT and all this gets priced out quickly. So you have to make a decision to invest there, and then once you invest there, you have to joint venture. Once you joint venture, you have to share the technology. So for a number of reasons, look for the Bolt to succeed here first, maybe later in China.
So I saw that Lei Eco came out with their own electric car recently, the Lei C, I believe it was called. And I was just wondering, what's the relationship between that car and the one that Faraday's building, and whether there's different engineers working on that one versus the ones in Torrance?
Okay, so definitely you know us. You brought up Let's See. Okay, I think regardless of Let's See or Faraday Future, so under the program is so-called C program. I mean that's published, right? So it's more like a smart, electric, vehicle, whatever the program, and this is two distinct, brands. And as far as Faraday Future, the brand actually has been totally engineered, designed here. And Let's See, that's a brand for China. May not be just for China, but it's been developed in China. So definitely there are some sharing knowledge on a certain level. But Let's See and Faraday Future F5, they are targeting different market. So different market positioning, different subgroup of users. So they're different brands.
I have a question about design. So if you think of the functionality, how much it's changing now with, well, firstly moving to electric drivetrain rather than gasoline, and then you have the possibility of autonomous driving. I mean, this just really changes the whole experience of driving. And yet, every car I see looks suspiciously like a regular car we've been driving for the last 50 years. 4 seats, the steering wheel, and 4 wheels. Are there any other design prototypes out there where you have, I don't know, one-person cars? I mean, you go to the 405 today, and I guarantee you 95% of those cars have got one person inside them with 4 seats. So as we revolutionize the type of the way we drive them and how we drive them, are people thinking about maybe different sizes, shapes, 2-story cars, single cars, cars for 20 people? Any thought going into that?
Yeah, there is, certainly, because again, that whole mobility issue, and it's this inexorable trend, right? There's far too many people coming up that are accumulating wealth that are looking to buy vehicles. And when you have cities that are just utter gridlock, you've got degradation to the environment, and in Asia specifically, they don't have the amount of time that some of the other markets have. So certainly people are going to start exploring larger ride-hauling mobility solutions. It's not just going to be the regular car that's set up in as an electric vehicle or autonomous driving. To do this right, this isn't in 5 years hence, but further down the road, they're going to have to develop different styles of cars to move people around. It's just the infrastructure is woefully inadequate for the vehicles that we have on the road today, more so in Asia, and we don't see that getting any better given the vast increase in people that will enter the ability to motorization.
So going into autonomous cars for a little bit, how do you guys envision the future of branding of autonomous cars would be? Because right now, a lot of it about automobiles is the engineering, is the functionality. Do you foresee the future of autonomous car marketing or branding being the luxury associated with the car or the interior?
Yeah, I think the autonomous drive, the features is going to be a commodity in the future. I'm pretty sure on that. Even though right now at the development stage, it seems like a luxury item. Actually, in the future, it's not. It's more like the technology take over some of the mechanical functions, whatever. So that's basically my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It could be a kit in the future. It could be a commodity in the future. There are certain suppliers who are providing the technology, and all the OEMs, they can use the same technology or same kit to provide autonomy technology.
So the differentiation happens inside the car. It's a living room on wheels, convenience, comfort, quiet, and connectivity. You're just relaxed going from point to point. You're not even worrying about driving anymore.
You keep mentioning Tesla and you keep mentioning electric vehicles. Well, the Tesla 3 is not an electric vehicle because now it is labeled as a mobile transport unit. It is not a car. It is not a vehicle. It is a mobile transport unit because it is a mobile computer. It is no longer a car that we know of. So right there, this is the beginning of a new industry. Thank you.
Great point. There's a woman named Padmasree Warrior at NextEV, yet another Chinese-funded startup. And just this week, I saw an interview with her, and she must have been talking to you because she said, "I tell my team we're building a robot that looks like a car." Okay, so yeah, we're moving on to something else.
You see, Tesla does not have dealerships. And we ran into a problem of coming into states where dealerships are required. And as a result, we no longer, in the 3, sell vehicles. They are mobile transport units, which do not fall under the dealership laws. Thank you.
Thank you for your.
It's probably more of a comment than anything else. I'm not sure how many people here in this room are aware that in the late 90s, the city of Los Angeles, in particular the Department of Water and Power, had a project called the LA 301, which was to develop a hybrid vehicle for the city of Los Angeles because we couldn't get any of the private entities to build a car. And in fact, I was involved in that effort. We did all the market research and so forth behind it. We determined how many cars could be sold. We actually had 2 prototypes built. One of them, I think, still exists out in Silmar at the DWP facility out there. It was basically a Prius, for lack of any other way to describe it. And it was amazing how that entire effort fell flat simply because we had so much backlash from industry, from General Motors in particular, from one of the oil companies in particular. This city had a vision to be the hybrid EV capital of the world way, way back, and it never happened. Now it's happening. Just a comment.
But you bring up a good point. So if you look at the global industry, you look how much units and operations out there, it's not sustainable. The one country that can mandate a significant change to an industry sector would be China, right? If they wanted to green their fleet, China could green the fleet. Not going to happen in the U.S., not going to happen in any of these other markets. They have the ability to do that. There's pressure already coming from various fronts in terms of the environmental degradation and whatnot. But the hope is that they start to take the reins on that and drive it through.
Hi, over here. I was wondering if you could comment on some of the infrastructure that would develop around the development of these driving or these electric cars, charging stations and such. You know, what is happening on that front, and where do we stand with maybe some business opportunities to service some of these cars?
Well, I'll start real quick, and then you could go. 'Cause there's clearly a need to enhance the infrastructure in Greater Asia, but more specifically in China. You know, the most people that they will live in apartments or smaller areas, and there's not quite the level of charging places around the city that allow for a convenient way to give your car a charge. So they certainly have the requirement to go out and start to address that, because again, several things have to be addressed. Assuming that the price of the lithium ion battery came down, so you had a comparable ICE to a comparable electric vehicle. The next challenge is making sure that you have the infrastructure for the charge. That's going to take some time and some knowledge. I don't know if you guys want to add to that.
Yeah, let me add. That actually is a good question, because people are always asking, charging, you know, what is the infrastructure? And it's more like a chicken and egg, right? So you buy a EV without infrastructure support, you're going to be hesitant to buy one. And another word is, who's going to make the first move to spend money or invest tons of money to set up the infrastructure? And oftentimes people think, you know, that may be the government's role to do that. And definitely, different market has different elements. You know, here and China, totally different, right? So if we're talking about charging, there's 2 categories. One is residential and commercial. Commercial has a highway and also destination charging. So the most expensive one to set up is a highway. We call that corridor, from one place to another place. That mainly is a DC fast charging stations, and the DC fast charging station definitely costs much more than the destination, which we call that level 2. It's mainly AC type of charging station. So without the corridor infrastructure in place, definitely people is going to have a concern to buy an EV. So now the question is like, who's going to make the first move? But right now, there's no successful business model for the charging service. So from our point of view, we think maybe we're gonna look differently on the charging business per your question. Basically, we're looking more like what's behind the charging. If you look at only the charging, definitely the direct revenue created is not going to support. And then if you look at the connected charging concept, maybe there is a good business model out there, which is a variable and profitable. What do I mean by that is, you sell actual contents. You sell the values behind the charging, since they're going to spend some time on charging stations anyway. So that's...
You're talking about cafe? Or?
It's not only cafe, it's more like, possibly you can rest. There's different ideas, you can take a rest massage in some kind of, well charging. And also the charging is not look like a gas station, because there's no emission, and it's electric powered. So maybe charging can be inside of the room. It's not necessarily has to be outside. So there's lots of more availabilities, beyond the charging, basically. I see the time possible.
So charging's still a big deal. Still a big deal.
It is a big deal,
and it's not
yes.
been solved yet. So that's both a problem and an opportunity for somebody smart to come up with a great solution, yeah? I understand we are on our way to drinks. Is that right, Terry? We're done here today. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, panelists. Terrific show.